Paramount, we've been speaking about the history of the Baha'i faith and its development in the Pacific. Maybe we could touch on some of the areas that Baha'is are currently involved in the teaching of the Baha'i faith and work within the community.
I think that's an important question, to look at what Baha'i communities are doing at the current time, not only in the Pacific but globally. And those activities are focused on the education of children, the education of young teens, or what we call junior youth, paying much more attention to visiting people in their homes, and in paying attention to study in small groups for the purpose of building community and building an understanding of our individual life and our community life. And as a historian, I see a significance in this. I'm going to just make a little parallel here. I think that when the Baha'is went into the Pacific in the 1950s, they were ahead of their time. They were talking about race equality. They're talking about the role of women in society. But now you go into the Pacific and most people believe that, accept that, and demand that, expect that. You couldn't have differential between the races going into a shop now. That's discrimination. But in the 50s it was allowed and expected. So in 50 years there's been a change. Now I want to suggest that by having a renewed emphasis on community building and on learning in local situations, learning about who's in our community, what are our needs, how do we develop holistic communities, and how do we grow. I think this question is ahead of its time. And I think that we will look back on this period of the early in the 21st century and say the Baha'is are at the forefront of community building. We've reached a new phase around the world. There's been a great disintegration in traditional lifestyles. There's been a great disillusionment with the so-called modern way of life, the commercialization and urbanization and moving into micro-families. And I think that what Baha'is are doing around the world is re-examining the basis of family life, community life, and most significantly asking the question, what is it we need to do in our situation to improve our standard of life, our moral condition, not just moral but material, our way of life. How can we improve it for ourselves and our children? This is a fundamental question Baha'is are interested in, and also interested in doing it not just within the Baha'i community but within the broader community of friends and relatives who are living nearby. So it's not about expansion of the Baha'i community, it's about improvement of the quality of life of that local area. I think it's a very innovative type of activity to be involved in. I've seen this at work in Suva, where I've been living for the last 6 years. I've seen it most recently in Port Moresby, where I see young people coming in from settlements, coming into the Baha'i Centre to do some learning together. And I'm thinking to myself that what I'm seeing here is very different to the other youth I'm seeing on the street of Port Moresby, who don't have much of a purpose and getting into lots of trouble on the street. And homebrew is a big problem in the streets of Port Moresby. And the young Baha'is have got this big pressure on them to conform in the settlements to the lifestyle, etc. And they're coming to the Baha'i Centre and they're learning that you don't do homebrew, that you don't do marijuana, that you try and stay away from those types of toxic substances and build up your own understanding of where you want to go with your life. So to see that at what we call grassroots level in the Pacific, to see people making choices, sticking to them, building on them within the Baha'i community. I've seen that in Lae as well, at the tremendous Baha'i Centre they have in Lae, and it's happening around the Pacific. It's very heartening, and we see it in Suva as well, at the Baha'i Centre there and other parts of Fiji. It's small scale, but it's authentic, and I think it has long-lasting impact. And as I said, I think that it'll be looked back at this period and say that Baha'is are ahead of their time, and other people will look in on community building. I know it's part of educational philosophy or educational theory at the current time to say, how can we get people to take a stronger interest in education in their communities, and not see education as something that you do just to get a job, but education for life, education for values, and how do you instill that into communities. And I think that the Baha'i communities are exploring that through their training programs in ways that is becoming recognised in more broadly in society. So that's something that will grow. Viewers may be interested to find out about that process and take part in it.